Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happens every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Carolyn. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Follow us and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
To kick off today's episode, I thought we could share some personal highlights from our weekend. We were channeling our inner athlete. We both competed in something this weekend, which was very exciting. So why don't we talk about what we did on Saturday?
Yes, which is why we're drinking champagne if you're watching us on video. We did pop the champagne. Unfortunately, we already recorded this once and I didn't have my microphone on. So you would have seen a popped champagne bottle, but now we have our champagne glass. And we are going to cheers to our athletic accomplishments this past weekend. You ready? Cheers.
Cheers.
I love you.
I love you.
Danielle is so mad at me.
No, I love you. I had bubbles in my throat. I love you too.
What did you do this past weekend?
Well, I was going to say, but the bubbles got caught in my throat. You've been on a champagne kick for a year now, so we don't only drink it to celebrate. You just enjoy prosecco more specifically.
Yeah, I don't have champagne money. We're not buying champagne.
We're buying prosecco.
Some bubbly.
But it is good. It's a good one.
Yeah, it is good.
So getting into our own athletic achievements this weekend, I ran a trail half marathon on Saturday. I will use the word trail lightly. It was a very beginner trail race. I'm wearing the shirt, the Louisville Trail Half.
Colorado is so weird with their town names. They don't say Louisville. They call it Louisville.
Yes. It was more of like a long path with some rolling hills, I will say, versus a technical course, but still fun to change it up. Fun to compete against other people, even though I didn't feel like I was doing much competing because I felt like a dumpster fire.
Can you tell the listeners who beat you?
This is so embarrassing. Maybe she listens to our podcast.
Oh, I would love it if she does.
There was an older woman. I don't know how old, but
older than what?
Like 50s or 60s.
Okay.
Who ran past me in jorts. Like full on jean shorts, hair down, hat on, crazy sunglasses. And I just see her run past me. And this is like pretty early on. And she just stays ahead of me the whole time.
Just got smoked by the jorts.
Yes. I was like, wow, nothing beats on your pride like someone running past you in a pair of jorts.
Yeah, that would be pretty demoralizing.
But it is in the middle of my marathon training cycle. So to be expected, I wasn't feeling great. This was not a goal race by any means. I like to throw a half marathon in my training cycle when I'm training for a marathon. So it's just a good way to get a race simulation in. And I tested out some gel things and wake up times and things like that. There's nothing like a race day to get you ready for a race versus just your typical long runs. Yeah. It was nice to do that, but whew, my legs are feeling it.
The fueling is so interesting to me because it really does take a lot of time and a lot of thinking and a lot of preparation in order to get your fuel down on what works with your body, make sure you're taking in enough calories and being able to run for that long of a distance.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely fun. I run this race back in, 2021 maybe. I think they put on a good race. It's a very small race. I don't even know if 100 people were running the half. And then they threw in a 10K and a 5K on the way back at the end part of the half because the 5K, 10K start later on. You see more people. But for a lot of it, you are kind of alone and it feels like a long run. You're like, where did everyone go? Slowly, you'll see people here and there. But definitely a fun way to start the day. And then I showered and made my way over to watch you in your CrossFit competition. So why don't you tell us about that?
I had a CrossFit competition this past weekend. It wasn't anything crazy. There were no prizes. It was a box-to-box competition. So what that means is in CrossFit, they do this strange thing where they call the gyms boxes. It was the gym that I go to versus another gym. I did it with a friend from the gym. Her name is April. Our team name was the Pelvic Powerhouse. We had t-shirts. We were definitely the best dressed. We didn't win by any means. We didn't even come close. But we both were able to do some things this past weekend in the competition that we were afraid to do, which I think is really cool. There were some heavy deadlifts that I was afraid of that I was able to do and maintain my strength and stability the whole time. And then there were some toes to bar that April and I were both nervous about because we had to do it synchronized, and we did them. It was very funny. We got no repped a lot, but we both did things that made us scared. And I think that goes a long way. We could have chosen to do an easier version of the workout, less weight, scaling options where you just bring your knees knees into your chest rather than get the toes to the bar. But we decided to go for it. I know that I was really proud of what we were able to accomplish without having to win. And I think it's a mentality that I've really dropped since playing sports, being able to do things competitively without the expectation that I need to place, that I need to be the best at something in order to do it. I'm learning really slowly how to allow myself to be mediocre, how to allow myself to be bad at things and still want to do them. Because in the past, if I was bad at something, I would just say I'm not doing it anymore.
I feel the same about running because I am a very average runner. I put a lot of time and effort into it and still don't see as much improvement as I would like. And at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. Am I pushing myself?
Yep.
Are you pushing yourself? Are we getting better every day to the best of our ability? And is it keeping us in that athletic realm that we get to be around like-minded people? We get to push our bodies, which we've been used to our whole lives, and getting to continue to do that. It's definitely nice. We both have built communities through these types of fitness. Like I go to run clubs and you go to CrossFit and you meet people and you make friendships, and that's really nice.
Yeah. And we do like to spend a lot of time together. We get along pretty well.
Pretty well. Come on, give us more credit than that. We spend a lot of time together.
I think it's really great that we both have some separate things. With you, with running, you have your community there. And then when I go and do CrossFit, I have my community there.
I used to do CrossFit. I separated with CrossFit.
Separated.
I miss the community aspect, but watching you all do those thrusters, I was like, none of that looks appealing. I do not miss those movements. And it's funny because then someone will be like, oh, where have you been all morning? I'm like, oh, I ran a half marathon. And to a CrossFitter, that's like the most outrageous thing they've ever heard. And I'm like, but you're doing these crazy movements. So it's just funny how the two worlds typically don't collide. Of course, there's people who do both. But a lot of the times you have CrossFitters hating anything running related, and runners hate to lift notoriously. I still get my lift in.
You do,
but
great.
It's in a very different way now, and it's just different.
Everyone likes to choose the crazy that they do, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And then we find some yoga
to bring us back to the
bring
middle.
us back.
That's right.
But outside of our highlights, we should definitely get into the real highlights of the week, starting with you and the NWSL.
Yes, I am in the NWSL. No, I am not. But I will talk to you about the NWSL. So this past Friday, Angel City out of LA played Washington Spirit out of DC. The Spirit are ranked number 2, while Angel City is fighting for a spot in that top 8 for playoffs. This match was a great one, except for the first 39 minutes when there was no scoring.
Doesn't that just mean there's really good defense?
Yeah, there was great defense. There were great shots on goal. But in the 39th minute, Ashley Hatch on the Washington Spirit scored her 5th goal of the season. As a reminder, Trinity Rodman was not playing in this game for the Washington Spirit due to a back injury in the last game against Kansas City. A little bit scary.
Yeah.
She came off in a wheelchair, didn't even travel with the team for this game. They're saying it's not a major injury. However, there's no timeline for her return.
They were saying she was having back spasms. Have you ever had a spasm like that?
I've gotten really tight in my back where I felt like, I'm going to start. I can't remember if it's actually ever happened.
I've had a spasm before, and it is so uncomfortable.
When did you get it?
I don't remember. I know I've experienced back spasms before. Nothing too extreme. I didn't need to seek medical attention. But any type of spasm like that, it is so uncomfortable and it's scary. So for her, I feel like she was experiencing multiple, and it looked very uncomfortable. So hopefully she's okay.
Ashley Hatch is now tied with Megan Rapinoe for the 6th most goals scored in NWSL history at 51. This is interesting because NWSL is so young that these records keep getting broken, and everyone who's playing now is really setting the records, right, for future players to come in. So very cool for her. And then we go into halftime, 1-0 Washington Spirit. After halftime, Angel City comes out hard in the second half. They are knocking on the door, and in the 51st minute, they score. Alyssa Thompson, who plays for Angel City, is playing incredibly well. She crossed a ball into the 6-yard box, that small little box outside of the goal. And then Messiah Bright hit it in with her shin. It was a great cross and a great goal. Messiah Bright was in the right place at the right time. And this was the first regular season goal for Messiah Bright. The Washington Spirit regained control, and the game-winning goal came from Washington Spirit's McKenna Morris, who subbed on the 69th minute. So how this happened was the goalie on Washington Spirit, Aubrey Kingsbury, made a save. She launched a ball to Rosemont Kouassi. Rosemont took the ball down the field in transition so fast. She sped past everyone, passed a great ball to McKenna Morris, who was able to finish, and that was the end for them. Spirit win 2-1.
Seemed like a high stakes game, and I know they still have plenty of season to play, so it's not so high stakes, but the players were really fired up when they were scoring.
I think we're getting to this time where Washington Spirit has already clinched their spot in the playoffs, but because everything's so close, people are fighting for playoff spots. Washington Spirit couldn't drop a game because they're trying to catch the Orlando Pride, who are going on this amazing run, and so they can't lose if they want to try to get into that number 1 spot. I thought it was a great game. Angel City has all of this investment poured into their team. I think it's only going to be really, really helpful for them, and they're still figuring some things out, but having young players like Alyssa Thompson, I think is only going to be good in the long run, and Alyssa Thompson is from that area, so they're building something great over there. I personally am really liking this Washington Spirit team. They're rising to the top. I'm excited to see what they do. They might be my secret pick.
To win it all?
Sure.
Or secret pick to root for?
Secret pick to root for and to win it all.
Okay.
The Orlando Pride have to lose at some point.
I don't know. I guess we'll see.
We will see, but I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just historic. I would be happy for the Orlando Pride, but this Washington Spirit team looks good. We need to get some people back and healthy. Casey Kruger was also out on the Washington Spirit with an injury. If injuries continue to persist, it's going to be a problem. Corey Bethune, who plays for the Washington Spirit, had a season-ending injury, but they still look good and they're still finding ways to score. What do you have to highlight for us this week?
After complaining about how horrible I felt in my half on Saturday,
13.1 miles.
Yeah, I will talk about a woman named Tara Dower. She's a 31-year-old ultra runner who lives in Virginia Beach, Virginia. On Saturday, September 21st, she became the fastest known person on record to complete the Appalachian Trail.
The Appalachian Trail, this is going back to my New Jersey public school education, which New Jersey public schools are great, but you're going to have to tell me how far the Appalachian Trail is and what states it goes through.
The trail consists of 2,189 miles. It traverses 14 states and has an elevation change that totals over 464,000 feet.
As a reminder, we say that when we go for a hike, if it's over 1,000, we know it's going to be a difficult hike.
Yes. My quote unquote trail half on Saturday had 500 feet of elevation gain, and I was feeling I feel so pathetic saying that. So can't even imagine. The 14 states that this covers are Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia.
That is a lot of states.
I'm going to say a dad joke, and things all runners hate is, I wouldn't even want to drive that far. But could you imagine even driving that far? And this woman literally ran/hiked this in 40 days, 18 hours, and 5 minutes.
Do you think her dad said that? This stinks for me to drive. I can't believe you're running it.
She's no stranger to the ultra sport, so I'm sure she's heard it plenty of times.
Why do all dads sound the same? I love it.
This was 13 hours faster than the previous fastest recorded time, which the previous record holder happened to be a man. In this feat, she averaged 54 miles a day.
I can't imagine that. I'm lucky if I walk 2 miles a day. I have so many questions. What are you eating? Where are you going to the bathroom? What are you thinking about? How are you putting 54 miles on your body every single day?
You're basically just sleeping, waking up, going, and eating.
If I did that, I think I would only get 20 miles if we're being really generous to me.
Well, this is why she's the fastest known person. The average person who does the Appalachian Trail, we both know people who have done it, takes about 5 to 7 months. She did it in just over 1 month. She obviously had a plan in place. She was going for this record. She knew that. She had people crewing her throughout. I was reading more about the trail. There's some parts that are pretty remote and there's no towns in sight. She had to be really careful about how she planned out her route, where to make sure she had someone with food or how much food she had until she knew she was going to see someone again. It is not just something you can just go out and do. There is a ton of planning that goes in on this.
A ton, because over 54 miles, miles, I can't imagine that you have your entire pack of things you need to eat in that day. So that probably means she needed to see someone along that route.
She did have a crew.
There are people who die on the Appalachian Trail because they go a little bit off trail, they get a little lost, they get turned around, and then they're not able to find their way back, which is really tragic. You need to make sure you're staying on trail when you're by yourself in the wilderness.
I was reading also that this trail is very technical. There's a lot of rocky parts. There's a lot of growth. You get a lot of rain with that. There's a lot of things coming out of the ground. She had to get through that, as does everyone who does this trail. But to be able to do it in that amount of time, it's mind-boggling to me.
My cousin has done the Appalachian Trail, and I thought he was crazy in order to be able to do it, and to do it in 40 days. Wow.
Truly incredible. She has also set the fastest known time on North Carolina's 1,175-mile Mountains to Sea Trail with a time of 29 days, 8 hours, and 48 minutes. She did that in 2022. This year, she finished fourth at the Hard Rock 100 Ultramarathon. Another cool thing was she was running to raise money for Girls on the Run. It's a nonprofit organization that gives young girls access to the sport and helps them learn more about the sport. It's also a way to volunteer, as some people like go and will hold their run groups. My friend from college, Laura Jordan, has done that at her school.
Inspiring young girls to be active, showing them that running is an option for them and that it might be something that they're interested in. I think that's great.
And she shared that she hoped to inspire women and girls to go for that tough goal, no matter if it's with running or in life.
I mean, talk about a tough goal.
And we talk about it all the time. Visibility matters, to have role models, to see a woman do this. Maybe you have someone who doesn't know if they could get into the ultra world, or they don't think they're good enough, but they're curious about it. And you see someone do this and you're like, why not me? Whether it's a 50-mile race or whatever it is, it could inspire people.
Are you inspired to run a 50-mile race?
Not after my race on Saturday. So with that, next highlight has to do with you. We already talked about your CrossFit competition, but in other news, Carolyn made the news. Cheesy, right?
I like it.
What was it? A week ago that you all of a sudden had this idea to write an opinion article to the Denver Post. You just wrote it. I'm like, what are you doing over there on the computer? And you're like, are you ready for me to read it? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you just start reading this article, and it happens to be something that you wrote. And you were like, yeah, I'm going to submit this to the Denver Post. And I was like, that sounds amazing. So why don't you share a little more about that?
I can't take all the credit. So I was talking to Dia and Lindsay, who co-run the WNBA club here in Denver. And after Portland announced that they had their WNBA expansion team, we talked about it here on the pod, and I was bummed. I was like, it doesn't look like Denver's getting a team. What can we do? What can we do as a community? What can I do as a community member to try to put some pressure on? We were chatting about ideas, and I was like, well, maybe I just go old school and try to submit something to the Denver Post, which is Denver's largest newspaper. And I was like, I'm going to write an opinion piece. We'll see if they take it. And they ended up taking it. We actually had no idea that it dropped.
So you email them and they get back to you pretty quickly.
Yep.
And they said, we want to find a place for this in this weekend's newspaper.
Yep.
Which you were like, oh my God. So then on Friday, we get a text from David, who's our friend and realtor. If you're in Denver and need a realtor, let us know. For real. Seriously. But David also is a fan of the pod and listens. We didn't even tell him that Carolyn was writing this article. And he just texts us. And it's the article you wrote. And we were like, how did he find this? Yes, the article was published. And I want you to read it.
Okay, I'm going to read it. Bear with me here. The idea is to say that Denver is a great place to have a WNBA team, and what we need is stronger investment. So I'll go into what I wrote. The title is Why a WNBA Team in Denver is a No-Brainer. Some people say Denver has everything: a vibrant city, access to amazing outdoor recreation, 300 days of sun, and a loyal fan base for all the men's professional sports teams. It is the reason I live here, and I love to call this city home. But what about the loyal fan base for the women's professional team in Denver? Right now, it doesn't exist because Denver doesn't have a women's team in a major sport, namely a WNBA team. Women's sports are on the rise thanks to increased investment, better media rights for national TV broadcasts, and rising stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. The WNBA began in 1996 and is experiencing unprecedented growth. WNBA games on ESPN saw a year-over-year increase of 170%. All 12 WNBA teams reported growth in ticket sales, and the Las Vegas Aces sold out their season tickets for the first time ahead of the 2024 season. This trend isn't just a one-time spike. Revenue in the WNBA doubled from 2019 to 2023. Within this growth, the WNBA is expanding. The San Francisco Valkyries will launch their inaugural season in 2025 with over 17,000 season ticket deposits, and the expansion doesn't stop there. Toronto and Portland will welcome the 14th and 15th WNBA teams respectively, with plans to add a 16th team by 2028. So why not Denver? The city already has a thriving fan base led by the WNBA club, and the club's success has inspired other cities across the nation to create their own. WNBA club watch parties fill local businesses like Lady Justice Brewing with fans eager to cheer for their favorite teams and players. Side note, Lady Justice is a great brewery in Denver, good. And they always play women's sports. This fall, Denver will welcome its first sports bar, the 99ers. The owners launched a successful Kickstarter campaign to raise $35,000 to add a back patio, anticipating high demand from fans and patrons. Cities with local sports teams see a boost in local spending, and Denver is already experiencing this without a team to root for. Adding a WNBA team would further position Denver as a sports destination, drawing fans from across the Rocky Mountain region. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert visited Denver in August 2023 to assess the city for a potential expansion team. However, the city did not do enough to impress. The players need a proper practice facility. Investors in other cities are stepping up. For example, the Phoenix Mercury just opened a 58,000 square foot state-of-the-art practice facility with courts named after veteran and GOAT Diana Taurasi. Ball Arena would be a perfect central spot to host games, and what a coincidence, a billionaire family who loves to invest in sports owns the venue. Looking at you, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment. In order to secure the next expansion team, Denver needs a strong commitment. Ball Arena will be available to be home court for the WNBA season from April to October. Investors should jump at the chance to attract a team to Denver. Maybe it's not the Kroenkes, but there has to be someone with money looking to make more. A recent report found the untapped potential of women's sports merchandise is $4 billion. Women's sponsorship deals consistently outperform those in men's sports. The fans stand ready to welcome a team, but excitement alone won't bring a team here. Strong investment will. Denver has almost everything. Choosing not to invest in a WNBA team here is bad business. Let's make Denver the destination for the WNBA's 16th team.
If you're interested in reading this article, you can go to our link tree, which is in our Instagram, and we linked it in there. I think it's worth the read. I know it is. It seems like we've gotten a lot of response already on social media with people responding to the article. I just think the city is ready for a WNBA team.
I just don't want to look back and be like, could the community have done more? Could we have put on more pressure and maybe gotten something? I feel like we're letting this slip through our fingers. And instead of having the conversation that we had last week where I was pretty much just bashing Nashville and Miami.
Sorry to everyone who lives there.
I wasn't bashing them. I just think Denver's a better spot. I won't go back down that rabbit hole. I thought, what can I actually do to make myself feel like I've done something here? And writing that piece was the answer in my head.
Well, great job. Very exciting and happy it got written. So with that, should we dive into the deep dive this week? We are human. We made a mistake last week. We were doing a fact check.
Yes. So last week we said that Dearica Hamby won Most Improved Player. And although she had an amazing season, that information was not confirmed. We got it from an Associated Press article, but we believe that it was what they thought, not actually what happened. Dejanay Carrington received 28 of the 67 votes from a national media panel to receive the award of Most Improved Player. Last week I said that Dearica Hamby I thought it was a great choice. I also think Dejanay Carrington winning is an amazing choice. You really can't go wrong between the two of them. It's a great award to win, and Dejanay Carrington received that over this past week.
She is just so fiery. She's been playing well in these games, in these playoff games that count, and she's been playing well throughout the season. Her defense is just next level.
I think she could have won Defensive Player of the Year.
We joked about her being one of the biggest trash talkers, which she absolutely is. And I think that helps her on defense because I know from my playing days, the people who I hated to play on me the most were the ones who were chirping in my ear, would just get in my head. That is part of the game, honestly. Yeah. And she does such a good job. And she has a good offensive game. She's just a fun player to watch. So kudos to her. Very exciting.
So with that, let's get into this past week. The WNBA made a statement saying that they will not tolerate racist, derogatory, or threatening comments made about players, teams, and anyone affiliated with the league. This came after an entire season of many players of color coming forward and saying they were the target of racist comments, death threats, and inappropriate behavior from fans, both online and while playing. Alyssa Thomas on the Connecticut Sun came forward and said in her 11-year career, she's never experienced the racial comments like she has from the Indiana Fever fan base, and Dejanay Carrington expressed similar sentiments throughout the season. Even Aaliyah Boston, who plays for the Indiana Fever, said that she was the recipient of racist and hateful comments when the season was starting. And we saw that, right? Unfortunately, this is happening. It took a little long for the WNBA to make a statement. We've been talking about this since Caitlin Clark was in college.
Yep, I know. Kathy Engelbert has been under some fire since she was asked about this a few weeks ago, and she didn't really address the question. And a lot of people have been questioning, what is she doing and how is she not addressing this more properly? So finally, they released a statement, and hopefully it does change things. And you had mentioned it's been happening since Caitlin Clark was in college, and Caitlin Clark since then has also been coming out and addressing it. I think there's been times, like in a most recent game, she got hit in the eye by Dejanay Carrington, and she said right away, it's part of the game. That could happen to anyone, and people went at Dejanay Carrington. And it's ridiculous that people feel the need to almost protect Caitlin Clark. And I just think it's this weird thing that I don't quite understand. And it's quite disturbing, honestly. And I appreciate that Caitlin Clark has said, these people are not fans. They're trolls. What are you doing?
Yeah. Fortunately, there are a ton of new fans coming into the WNBA. Unfortunately, some of those fans are racist, and they're using Caitlin Clark as a platform for their racism. I think Caitlin Clark, as you said, has been doing a good job of denouncing it. I think also because Caitlin Clark is pretty neutral on a lot of things, that people can just project whatever they believe onto her. So I'm glad she's coming forward and saying a little bit more. The WNBA has historically been a really safe place for people of color and the LGBTQ plus community. And I really think we need to keep it that way. I do think the WNBA needs to have a stronger response to protect the players. I don't go to my job and get harassed about my LGBTQ plus status. I just don't. And so these players do not deserve to go to their job and get harassed and attacked. You can say it's part of the game to be booed or things like that, but racial comments are not tolerated.
Correct.
I also think that we as fans have a responsibility to call out the behavior, especially as white fans. I think we have to make sure that it's not happening. So if we're at a game, if you're at a game, people are entitled to their free speech, even if it's a really wrong opinion. But we as fans can make it really uncomfortable for racist people who attend. The WNBA has their job, and we have our job to call it out and be like, no, that doesn't happen here.
Right.
Like, your Band Nails t-shirt is racist, so racist, and get out, and I'm going to make it so uncomfortable for you.
Yep.
Really unfortunate to see. Glad to see the WNBA said something.
And one statement is not going to do it. There's going to need to be continuous statements, and the WNBA is going to need to come up with some sort of plan to continue to address this. And I hope that's something they're working on, and we continue to see them address this horrible situation.
And we as fans are watching, so let's see what happens. So with that, let's get into these semifinal matchups, and let's deep dive into what we're working with for each team.
Given these matchups, I think they're going to be really fun games. Just to talk about high level, what we've seen throughout the year, what we've seen in the past, and just to give truly an overview. Honestly, like any of these matchups to be in a final game would be so exciting.
Definitely.
So first, let's talk about number 4, Las Vegas Aces versus number 1, New York Liberty. As a reminder, this is a rematch from the 2023 finals.
I love that we're getting this in the semifinals.
Yes.
I love that we're getting the rematch. Everyone wanted it. The Liberty want it. Maybe the Aces don't want it, but the Liberty definitely want it. They want to beat the Aces on their way to get to the finals for sure. So I just think this is great.
And it reminds me of this past college season because in the semifinals, LSU had to play Iowa, and that was the previous year matchup. It's just cool to see these teams match up again, but not in the finals because now, no matter what happens, we'll get to see a different final matchup.
A final matchup.
So the Aces are led by who else? MVP Asia Wilson, and the Liberty is led by 2-time finals MVP Brianna Stewart. Both amazing players in their own right. This year, the New York Liberty went 3-0 against the Aces in the regular season. Not talking about any playoff games, just regular season. And what do I always say? It's hard to continue to beat a team. Some notable stats for the two teams include the Liberty have gone 16-4 in home games this year.
Wow.
So they win at home, and these games are played on their court for the first 2. At least.
Yes. And how do you not win when Ellie is behind you?
Very true. Whenever we see New York on the screen, those fans are there. They're excited. It looks like a great atmosphere.
It is a great atmosphere there.
New York averages 22.8 assists per game to lead the Eastern Conference. Sabrina Ionescu leads their assists per game with 6.2. The Aces are 14-6 on the road.
Wow.
So that's interesting. They do pretty well on the road.
What is happening that they do so well on the road?
I don't know. New York averages 10.1 made 3-pointers per game. Las Vegas averages 9.4 made 3-pointers per game this season. They're very close in a lot of ways. So given them being in the finals alone last year, overall, an exciting series. Excited to continue to see how it plays out.
These games are best out of 5. So we were best out of 3, and now we're best out of 5 for the semifinals. And the higher seed gets home court advantage, which is the New York Liberty in this case. So they get 1, 2, and 5 if needed. And the Las Vegas Aces would get games 3 and 4 if needed.
Yes. Also want to talk about players to watch. The Aces are led by Asia Wilson, who leads the Aces with 26.9 points and 11.9 rebounds per game.
A double-double.
Yes.
She
is averaging a double-double. She also contributes 2.3 assists and 1.8 steals, which is 4th in the WNBA.
I mean, that's not a guard.
Right.
With those steals.
Yep. And 2.6 block shots, which is 1st in the WNBA. Hashtag block party. Jackie Young leads the team with 5.3 assists per game, and she also adds 15.8 points and 4.4 rebounds. She also has a great shooting average. She makes 43% of her shots from the field. And then we have Kelsey Plum, and she adds 17.8 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists per game. And she makes 42.3% of her shots from the field.
This is reminding me of, I'm very much into Gamecock women's basketball Instagram. They did this video where they asked the players what they thought their shooting percentage was going to be throughout practice, because can you even imagine now they're calculating what your shooting percentage is throughout practice? Such a great idea, because how you practice is how you play. And so it could be very data driven of here is what your stats are and here's where you need to work on it. I think that's so cool. But anyway, the players were guessing what their shooting percentage would be in practice. And so many of them were so off.
Oh.
Both positive and negative. Like some thought they were going to shoot so much higher and then scored so much lower. Some thought so much lower and got so much higher. It was really funny.
That is funny.
I feel like I would lowball myself.
Yeah, probably same, because I don't want to embarrass myself.
Exactly.
Why don't we talk about a few of the Liberty players to be on the lookout for?
Brianna Stewart leads the Liberty with 20.4 points, is getting 3.5 assists per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. She is 4th in the league in scoring. Sabrina Ionescu leads Liberty with 6.2 assists, 4.4 rebounds, and 18.2 points per game. She is 5th in the WNBA in assists. And Jonquel Jones leads the team with 9 rebounds per game. She also averages 14.2 points and 3.2 assists.
So question, do you have any predictions on this series, and or do you personally want one team over the other to win?
I love love the Aces. It would be cool if they went for the three-peat. However, I think the Liberty are going to pull this off. That's my prediction. What about you?
I have been going back and forth about this, but I think both teams definitely have something that they're chasing. I think because the Aces had a rough regular season, they're like, we need to get our stuff together. I think they're going to surprise the Liberty again and take it and go to the finals.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Yeah.
They just step up during playoff time. Chelsea Gray already is playing so well in the playoffs. She like turns on this playoff switch and she just starts playing amazingly.
Yeah. And there's obviously players on the Liberty who are playing well. Like Sabrina had one of the best games of her life the other night. It's really been fun to watch.
And Liberty has players like Benijah, Lainey Hamilton, and like Leonie Fibich who are just putting in such good time right now that they could pull it off.
The next matchup, also very exciting, is the number 2 Minnesota Lynx versus the number 3 Connecticut Sun. Last season, the Connecticut Sun knocked off the Minnesota Lynx out of the playoffs in the first round. A different storyline, but also the Minnesota Lynx are coming back for revenge. So this is the first time since 2020 that Minnesota Lynx have reached this stage in playoffs. Oh my gosh, they've been looking scary. I keep saying it. I have my money on them. Again, we'll go into some notable stats. The Lynx have only lost 2 games since the Olympic break. Home court advantage in their case is huge. And for them to start this series there is really good for them because this past season in the regular season, they were tied with the Liberty for the best home record in the league at 16-4. The Lynx has also made 38% of their 3-point attempts this season, which is the best in the league. This past season, the Connecticut Sun have shot 32.7% from the 3. That has increased slightly to 34.6% after Marina Mabry joined the roster, and whoo, she's also been playing great. We keep seeing these clips of her and Dijonay from enemies to
Besties.
Great friends, and teammates. That's a scary duo.
There are so many people who I am friends with from New Jersey where I'm like, I'm so happy you're my friend because if you were my enemy, I would be so afraid of you.
It's so true. So I'm glad they get along and good for their team there.
Let's get into some of the players to watch. On the Lynx, obviously, Nafisa Collier averages 20.4 points and 9.7 rebounds per game. She's also posting 3.4 assists and shooting 49.2% from the floor. She is unstoppable.
Unstoppable. And her 20 points and 9 rebounds, she's leading the team in both those categories.
Courtney Williams puts up a team best at 5.5 assists per game. She's also shooting 44.3% from the floor. And then Kayla McBride is scoring 15 points per game, 3.2 assists, and 2.6 rebounds per game. On top of that, you also have Bridget Carlton. It's just a stacked team. Who do we have from the Sun?
Alyssa Thomas averages 8.4 rebounds, 7.9 assists, and 10.6 points per game. I always think it's very impressive when she's more of a small forward, but for her to have 7.9 assists per game is very impressive. Dewana Bonner is the Suns' top scorer with 15.1 points per game and averages 2 assists and 6 rebounds. And then you have Dijonay Carrington, who averages 12.7 points, 5 rebounds, and she makes 40.3% of her shots from the floor. You can't go without saying Brianna Jones is scoring 13.7 points per game, and Marina Mabry, who joined the team late this year, is 14.4 points a game. Both of these rosters are scary good.
Who do you have winning this series?
Well, I already told you who I have winning the whole thing, the Lynx.
So you think Minnesota Lynx are going to take it?
And I think the Sun are playing great. I just think the Lynx are gelling and playing incredible. So that's who my money's on. How about you?
I think the same. I also think this is going to be a great matchup.
Yeah.
This is prime time, movie after movie. These games are going to be amazing.
For sure.
With that, let's get into what we're looking forward to this week. Danielle, what do you got?
So speaking of the WNBA semifinals, game 2 is today, October 1st. So for both teams, game 3 will be on Friday, October 4th. What do you have for us?
I am looking forward to the Washington Spirit NWSL women's soccer versus the Orlando Pride on Sunday, October 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2. Hopefully Trinity Rodman is back. We'll see. We were talking a little bit about the Washington Spirit and how they were down some players. Hal Hirschfeld, who plays for the Washington Spirit and who I've coined best smile of the NWSL, aka hottest in the NWSL. She picked up a yellow card versus Angel City. It was her 5th of the season, which means she is not allowed to play in this match. This is a huge match for them. We are going to see what happens. That's it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch women's sports, rate and subscribe to the pod on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Share the podcast with your friends. Share the podcast with your rich friends who have $1 billion to invest into a WNBA team
In Denver.
Only in Denver.
Yes.
And keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.